Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode in the series, Dawah Ilallah. How to call people to submission to Allah. This is the point of why we are here on earth. The mission that we have been given, the project that we have been given, the aim in our life is to propagate the message of Islam. That's why when we reverted, we didn't just revert and keep it to ourselves. Our aim, our mission, our job is to talk. As we have said before, if you don't talk, what will people do? They will walk. So if you don't talk, people walk. So our job is to talk. Are we to talk nonsense? No. And we've been looking in the series at some of the characteristics of a talker. Not as a public speaker, but as a da'i, someone calling to Allah. That is the most important thing to do. There are many people doing dawah. Very few are calling to Allah. Some people are doing dawah for name, claim and fame. Some people are doing dawah to Hinduism. Some people are doing dawah to Buddhism. But very few are calling to the submission of the one true God. This is why we call it Dawah Ilallah. Very specific. Because many people, even Muslims, may be calling to the wrong thing and not sure how to do dawah. So this series is building the framework that is required for you to be successful in calling people to submit to Allah. And then upon that framework, we will build the rest. There's no use telling you techniques on how to speak to Hindus and Christians and Buddhists and atheists when there's no framework. Then it's just going to fall apart. And the first opposition that comes your way, you're not going to be able to handle it. So the characteristics that we've looked at so far in the series is that first and foremost, that a da'i must believe in what he's calling to. It's no use calling to something and you don't believe it yourself. That a da'i must have certain manners, mannerisms, characters. The next important thing is to have knowledge. Obviously you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have had a PhD. If you have one, all the better. You're required to gain knowledge until the day you die. There's so much knowledge. Knowledge on mathematics, knowledge on science, knowledge on biology, knowledge on the Sharia, knowledge on everything there is to know about Islam. So it's secular and religious knowledge. Then a da'i must make sure that he seeks the favor of Allah, that he wants to do it for the sake of Allah, and that he, as much as possible, connects to some type of organizational structure. There is no Lone Rangers. Even the Lone Ranger had his horse and he had Tonto, his sidekick. So he wasn't actually alone, he still had someone. But we must be careful that we don't look at that analogy and say, okay, us four and no more. We must get a team of people together. We don't want the magnificent four. We want a whole group of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of da'is. During the time of the late Sheikh Ahmed Deedat, when he was alive, he was a one-man band. It was him on his own. And then Dr. Zakir and I came along. And he empowered people to gain that same knowledge that he had. And so now there are hundreds of thousands of Sheikh Ahmed Deedats in the world today. Every second person has that knowledge. Because Dr. Zakir Naik makes sure that he empowered people. So he didn't keep it for himself and say, well, I'm going to be the successor and I'm not going to share this knowledge. He made sure that the world had an opportunity. Thus, Peace TV and many of the other organizations that have come off this, like the Islamic Research Foundation and so on. So if we look at it from a perspective of a da'i, we do not want to keep this knowledge to ourselves. We do not have intellectual copyright to the information that we are sharing. Allah gave it to us. If anyone owns the copyrights, it is Allah. So this information that we gain and our knowledge that we gain as da'is is to be given out to other people as quickly as possible, so that they can become effective da'is. So this is the duty of gaining knowledge and joining to a group. And also by joining to a group, there needs a certain amount of self-purification. not in a mystical sense, but in the sense that you need to check your character and your behavior, and you need to lose those behaviors that are against Islam. Those things that are actually going to prevent someone from becoming a Muslim. I often hear people say, I will do business with anyone other than a Muslim. What type of character are you developing if that's what the non-Muslim thinks of you? They should be saying, I will do business with no one but a Muslim. Some countries is like that. People will only do business with Muslims. Other countries, they will not touch them. The other important thing to develop as a characteristic of a da'i is that you have to be a very good planner. You have to be a war strategist. Just like you would see in those stories of the Second World War or First World War, they'd have a war cabinet, or America has a war cabinet that has meetings. In the same way, a da'i must have a strategic plan. He must have it mapped out, zoned out, communities, who we're going to target first. This is a model that has been given to us by the early Muslims and how they targeted where they would go. And then you need to develop certain skills like reading, writing, public speaking, and things like that. And of course, the most important and the most difficult one is to learn to have patience. That is not going to happen in a day. And as part of the planning, you have to realize that you need a long-term goal. No short-term goals in the work of dawah. Whether it be to your neighbors or whether you're doing it as a collective organization, there is no short-term goal in dawah. It's long-term. You're in for the long haul, as they say. Your next-door neighbor, maybe Allah will give them the ability to understand and accept everything the first time you speak to them. But perhaps it'll take a few years. And so it's persistence wears down resistance. We gave the analogy of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, how he used to walk those rickety roads, those dangerous mountain highways, where the houses were built on either side. And the pathways were as wide as this desk, not this way, but that way. And so when people insulted or threw things at him, they would have hit him. But he persisted, even under all that pressure. And so it's an example to us to continue, not to give up because you maybe got a smack, not to give up because somebody insulted you, not to give up because they start to attack your character. They can attack your character, not a problem. It's when they attack the content that you defend. You understand? So if they say, oh, you're ugly, you dress funny, your mother doesn't like you anymore, that doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. It shouldn't worry you. What should worry you is when they attack the Quran, when they attack Islam, and you don't defend it. But you're more interested in defending your own physical characteristics if they attack those. So you must understand we have the priority right. So we have to learn patience and perseverance. The next point that we're going to speak about today, we're going to go into, is tolerance. It's one of the issues that we need to understand, that tolerance and forgiveness are these two things that need to go hand in hand. And we say we don't wait for forgiveness till Ramadan and then forgive people. Some people don't even forgive people in Ramadan. They carry it over, and then they think their fast is going to be accepted from them. Ask for forgiveness no matter what they've done to you. I had a person that I thought was the worst person on planet Earth that I had to work for at one point in my life. And it was going to be impossible when Ramadan came along to forgive this man. I thought there's not a chance. This man had done so much that it was impossible to be forgiven, because he was into all sorts of haram things in his Islamic life. And they had made him a board member of an organization. I thought, how can I forgive this man? He's destroying a good organization, and I got tested, because when Ramadan came, what am I going to do? Am I going to forgive? Am I going to be tolerant? Yes, I might not agree with what he did, but there has to come a time where I have to forgive and move on. Otherwise, it's going to be like a poison that's going to prevent me from being successful. Successful in my religion, successful in my learning, successful in my deen, not successful as a celebrity, not successful in the eyes of people, successful in the eyes of Allah. And that pride, that arrogance can prevent you from moving forward. So make sure that if you have forgiveness that needs to be given, you do it. Even today, maybe your daughter and your son has said something so terrible that you haven't been able to forgive them, and you are separated from them, and you haven't spoken to them for 3 or 4 years. It's the time to make amends now. Swallow your pride. It's better for you. Yes, there are going to be lots of tears, but those tears will be healing tears. Better to do that than to be asked on the day of judgment why you held that grudge. Remember, that if you don't forgive somebody's sins, that is going to be something that will carry over to the hereafter. It's very, very important that we seek forgiveness and that we give forgiveness to those people who have offended us. So only Allah knows what is in the heart of man. And so when we hold these angers for someone, as one of my brothers said to me in South Africa, he said to him, you know, you're such a good Muslim, you're such a good role model. And he said, don't ever say that to me. And I asked him, but why? He said, because you have no idea what happens behind closed doors. Not that he's saying he's a bad guy, but he's saying you do not know what's happening behind closed doors. Maybe the person that appears to be this most amazing person is the biggest rogue and hypocrite that ever walked. But he appears to the public and everyone else, he's fooled everybody. And the person that you think, because he's so bad with what you see, is actually a very good person. So only Allah knows. So this is why from our side we have to ask forgiveness without a but. Have you seen people when they ask forgiveness? Forgive me if I hurt you. Forgive me but I didn't understand. No ifs and buts. It's forgive me. I'm sorry. No additions on it. Because if you say, I'm sorry if I offend you, it means you're not sorry. You're using a loophole. So there's no loophole. It must be 100% forgiven. Allah will judge that man on the day of judgment for what he or she has done or not done. It's not my job to play the role of Allah on planet Earth. My job is to correct him privately, which I did. Then I corrected him with another person, which I did. Then I corrected him with a group of people, which I did. So after there's a process. There's not a one, just go straight to the media. Like we have a group in South Africa, a very, very dangerous group. And they call themselves the Majlis. You've heard of them. They're this crazy bunch. They just do their own thing. And they're pen jihadis. You know those pen jihadis? They go on the internet and they just write nonsense. No backing, no proof. No, they haven't gone through the processes of asking people, did you say this? Did this happen? Is this what? None of that process. Directly from hearing to putting it all over the media, all over the internet. And so they destroy people like that. They lie because they haven't got the information correct. So they will come and they will accuse a company. Say a company makes bottled water in the country. And because they heard a rumor from somebody and they never verified it, they never picked up a phone, never wrote a letter, they say this water has alcohol in it. And then we find out that there's no such thing, but now the damage has already been done. Not even a Muslim owns the company. But it's dangerous things like that that you have these pen jihadis that don't follow a process. So you have to be very cautious of becoming a pen jihadi. Ask questions. Make sure you seek forgiveness from people that you may have offended. Don't just go out and start writing fatwas on your own. Now this is the most dangerous thing that we have in our society today. It's everybody's writing a fatwa. You know, a guy who's got 2 months knowledge of Islam, he's writing his rulings and legislations and everything already. We must be very cautious. This is why we have scholars in place. This is why we have the learned scholars. Not because they can make mistakes, but we are hoping that they are going to not give opinions. Not going to say, this is what I feel about the situation. When a scholar says, this is what I feel about a situation, you change that scholar. You move to a new one. You move to one that says, this is what the hadith says. This is the chain of this hadith. This is the strength of it. This is what the Quran says. This is the correct interpretation of it. Not his own views and opinions and this is what I feel about it. So there are things that we have to be cautious. So now we've got distracted from what we're actually speaking about, but this is important that we ask these questions when we come across them so we can understand the wholeness of what is required from us.
A friendly message by Dr. Zakir, the fastest growing religion in the world.
A survey was published in the Reader's Digest Almanac book, 1983, which was also reprinted in the Plain Truth magazine, February 1984. This survey gave the statistics of the increase in the percentage of the major world religions in a span of 50 years, from 1934 to 1984. The religion which increased the maximum at number 1 position was Islam, which increased by 235%. Christianity, only 47%. Which war took place between 1934 and 1984, which forced millions of people to accept Islam? Which sword was used? According to the latest statistics, today, the fastest growing religion in America is Islam. The fastest growing religion in Europe is Islam. The fastest growing religion in the world is Islam. Which sword is forcing tens of thousands of Americans to accept Islam? Tens of thousands of Europeans to accept Islam? Millions of people in the world to accept Islam? Which sword? It is the sword of Islam, the sword of peace, the sword of truth and wisdom, which gives the solution to the problems of humanity.
Peace TV, the solution for humanity. Peace TV presents over 100 million viewers at one of the largest peace conferences in the world, addressing a sea of spellbound spectators. Over 30 world-renowned orators on Islam with credentials impeccable.
The truth of Islam.
Deen is your way of life.
It is our duty, our obligation.
By following the Quran and Sunnah,
we will give the message to one and all.
With articulation exquisite.
Read the book of Allah.
Islam is the easy way. It's the simple way.
remind each other.
The Muslim is not a source of harm for other people.
Collaborate with the people for good.
This is the call of Islam.
With the mission of spreading the truth of Islam.
Do what you can to spread the word of Islam.
Wherever we are,
Live like a Muslim.
Use your power.
Allah is saying, why do you need anything else? This Quran is self-sufficient.
the only book on the face of the globe, the Quran.
How a human being should lead his life is given in this instruction manual, the glorious Quran.
For peace to prevail on earth in Peacemakers. Next on Peace TV.
We need to develop in ourselves these two qualities, the qualities of tolerance and the quality of forgiveness. Sometimes we even have to be tolerant of ourselves, of our own stupidity, or tolerant of our own intellectualism, if there's such a word. Sometimes we think I'm so bright, but I can't tell anybody. We have to be tolerant, There needs to be this balance, you know what I mean? You might be smart, and then you don't want to tell people you're smart. You might be stupid, and you're telling too many people you're stupid. If I open your mouth, you tell them you're stupid. So you have to have that balance. So you have to be tolerant as well with your own shortcomings, and understand that you're still being worked on. We haven't arrived yet. We're never going to arrive. I told that story last time I did a series on Peace TV about the skipper who's skippering a yacht, sailing a yacht. When he looks up in the night sky, say all his instrumentation fails. He looks at the night sky and he sees the Southern Cross, he sees the constellations, he sees the three sisters, he looks at all the just constellations that are in the sky and he navigates according to them. Is he ever going to reach those stars? Never. But it still means he has to aim his ship towards them if he wants to navigate successfully and be safe. He's never going to reach it, but he keeps trying because that's the safe path to go. So in the same way, we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to get it right. But it doesn't mean you give up. You must act as if you can attain it. You must live your life as if it's a possibility. You mustn't live your life saying, never going to be perfect anyway, and just give up. No, you must say, I can be perfect. Not going to get there, but you have to have that goal in front of you. So if that carrot is removed, the donkey doesn't go forward. You know those pictures you see of the donkey going forward with the carrot? But the load, the idea of that analogy sometimes baffles me a bit. Because if I overburden the donkey, even if you put a carrot, it ain't going to go anywhere. No matter how nice the carrot is, the burden is too much for him. So if the burden is light and the carrot is nice, then you'll move forward. So don't overburden yourself. Take small doses of information at a time, perfect it while you try to. But don't put the whole history of Islam for the last 1,000 years and every fatwa and every ruling and everything on top of you at once. You'll just give up and then you'll say, I can't do it. So just take one little thing, whatever appeals to you, whatever Allah has guided you to, do the best you can. There's a saying that my dad used to say, it said, good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better and your better is best. This is a beautiful little saying because that's how it should be. You should continuously be progressing. Every year you should look back and go, wow, was I a Muslim even last year? Was I a Muslim? You should be ashamed because you should see how far you've come. You shouldn't look back and go, sure, I was better a Muslim last year than this year. We should be improving the whole time. Maybe ashamed was the wrong word to use. Not ashamed. But we should be looking and say, yo, I'm glad I sorted that issue out in my life. I'm very thankful, Allah, that you have managed to give me victory in that area of my life. Because that's when we see progress, when we start moving forward. When we start looking back and we go, yo, I move forward. But don't be arrogant when you move forward. Don't look at the other people that are still there and go, what's wrong with you? Can't you get to where I am? No, they're on their own walk. You are there as a guide to help them when they require it. You're there to be a friend to them, not there as the haram police. Okay, so this is the next important issue that we have to install into our life. And this is that when we talk to people, when we are tolerant of other people, when we forgive other people, this will help us to be better da'is, inshallah, in the future. Another good quality for a da'i is taqwa. What is taqwa? Piety, fear of Allah. Fear of Allah. This is something that's important. Remember, we are talking about a healthy fear. We're not talking about extremes. One extreme is the Christians who have absolutely no fear. They tell God what to do every single day. They literally tell him what to do. They don't ask, they tell. There's a verse that says, come boldly into the throne room of God, laying your requests known unto him. So that's how they do it. It's like walking into the president's office and saying, hey, Mr. President, you will get me this. None of us would do that. None of us would be so stupid as to do that. Now, that's the one extreme. And then we've got the other extreme where the Orthodox Jews, those who are very pious in the Jewish faith, because lots of Jews are not pious, but the Orthodox Jews, he lives in absolute terror of everything being wrong. I mean, there's no halal in the life. There's just haram. Whole of life is haram. So you've got these two extremes. Islam is the middle road, the middle path. We have a healthy respect for Allah, balanced respect. So it's not just in terror and fear and trepidation all day long, or it's not just buddy-buddy, or what I call the cult of informality, being informal. Where people just, it's a dangerous cult. And we find more and more religions in the world, even in Islam, we've got some groups within Islam that are informal. There's no respect for Allah when they pray, when they talk, when they ask, when they intercede. So this is something that we have to have. So we need to make sure that we have the fear of Allah in our heart, but the hope of Allah as well. So we mustn't just concentrate that the fact that when we die, we're all going to go to the hellfire. Some people are like that. I used to be like that for a long time. Do you know that? I used to be one of those people that says,